Alright, now that we've made our way through the basic panel, I want to continue to work on this image, and I want to bring back some of the other aspects of the Lightroom interface. To do that, what we can do is simply press Shift-Tab once, and then press it again, and it will bring everything back to normal. And it's just a quick and easy way to get things going. Alright, well, what else might we want to do with this image? One of the things I'm noticing is that I don't quite like the warmth there, so I'm just going to tweak this just a little bit and also lower the saturation. I just want to bring that down. I want to have a really nice, natural looking photograph, and I think that looks pretty good. I'll press the backslash key. There's my before and after. Well, another thing that we need to do, of course, is work on some of the detail aspects of the photograph. So in the Navigator panel, let's go ahead and click it 1-to-1 and then view some of the detail in the face. Now, unfortunately, this image isn't very sharp, so we're going to need to try to sharpen this up a bit. Now, you can see that I've increased my clarity and contrast. I want to do that first before I head down to my detail panel. Now, here with this image, I'm not going to do any work with tone curve, black and white, or split toning. I'm simply going to jump down to detail. Now, here in the detail panel, what I want to do is increase the sharpening amount, probably decrease the radius and the detail there. I want to try to bring in some nice sharpening, increasing my masking, and I want to try to bring out some of the shape and sharpness there. It's going to be tricky, but I'm going to do my best. Here we can hold down Option or Alt and click on these controls in order to see how this is affecting these different areas. You can see how the edges are coming out there. Also, how we can work on different details. In this case, we want a lower detail amount, and then of course how we can mask out certain areas in order to sharpen other areas even more. Next, let's add a little bit of noise reduction, a little luminance noise reduction, and some contrast in, and also a little bit of work on the color areas of the photograph. Now, once we do this, we can of course go back and modify our other sliders in order to get this looking its best. Here we'll flip on this little switch on and off. There's before, and then there's after. Some great noise reduction and also some nice sharpening. Okay, well, let's zoom out a bit. Here we'll go back to this fit in view. Next thing that I want to do is I want to get a little bit creative with this photograph. So in order to do that, I'm going to navigate back to my basic panel. And in the basic panel, I'm just going to warm this up just a little bit more. I keep going back and forth with trying to determine what color would look best for this image. So again, just a little bit more tint there and a little bit more warmth. Okay, that's good. Well, how about getting creative? Well, one thing that we might want to do is add some film grain to the photograph. We also might want to try an interesting crop or black and white conversion. And once we start to get creative, what I like to do is to create a virtual copy. So let's go ahead and do that. Here we'll press Command apostrophe on a Mac, Control apostrophe on Windows. Next, you can see down in the film strip we now have a virtual copy. Well, what I'm going to do is add some film grain to this photograph. You'll notice that there's a new preset which allows us to add different amounts of grain. For this image, I want to add a medium amount of grain, and then I'm going to zoom into the photograph so that I can evaluate that. Here we can see the grain structure across the image. We can click on these different presets in order to have a preview of these different types of grain. And once I get close, I'm thinking that light amount of grain actually looks good. It builds up the image a bit more, and I really like it. So I'll go ahead and increase my contrast as well, which will bring out a little bit more of that texture. And I'm going to recover a bit of those highlights a little bit more as well. And I think this is kind of fun. All right, well, let's press Command or Control minus to zoom out. One of the things that we're going to do when we're working on our images is, of course, experiment, right? And that's the whole point of what our workflow is here. Well, how about removing the color? One easy way to do that is to press the V key, and that will just give us a quick preview of this black and white conversion. Well, here I'm liking that, except I want to modify my tone a bit. I'm going to bring in some more fill light, bring down the highlights there a bit, and also work on the contrast and a little bit on my blacks, trying to create a bit more drama. Next, I want to add a vignette. I want to darken up some of these edges. To do that, we'll press a shortcut. It's Command 6 on a Mac, Control 6 on Windows. This gives us access to our lens vignetting controls here. We'll go ahead and just darken up some of these edges, and it's going to work on the edges around the frame, which is really kind of nice, just a subtle little darkening effect. Here's that before and then after, focusing more attention on this area of the image. Now, another thing I want to do is bring out some of these shadows. So to do that, we'll press the K key to access the adjustment brush. Here we have an increased exposure, which is nice. My flow is currently at 47. To change that, I'll press 3 on the keyboard to go to 30, or 2 on the keyboard to go to 20, or just drag the slider in order to change that here. Alright, well, we want a relatively high feather amount, a little bit of a smaller brush, I should say. And so now that we have this nice small brush, all I'm going to do is just start to paint over this area of the face. I want to try to equalize the light that we have here so it's not quite so split from the highlight side to the shadow side. Okay, well, that adjustment's kind of nice. Let's add another adjustment. Press K once, press K again to re-enter the tool. This time, let's decrease our exposure, and we'll go over here and just darken up this side of the image. So again, we're just working on one side of the photograph and then another. And I'll darken up the wall a little bit as well. And again, just working through the photograph, making some subtle little adjustments, nothing huge here, but some nice improvements to the overall image. Okay, well, let's look at how we're doing here. If we press the backslash key, we'll see there's our before, and now there's our after. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see the details there of the face. Here we have it, the before and then the after. We have a pretty interesting and fun black and white option for this photograph. Now let's say that we want to try something else out, like maybe a different type of a crop. Well, once again, I would probably create another virtual copy. Let's press Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and then apostrophe. Now that we have this new virtual copy, we'll press the R key in order to access our crop tool. And what I want to do is lock my aspect ratio. So I'll press the A key to make sure that little lock is locked down. And then I'll simply click and drag one of my corner points. And basically what I'm looking to do is to try to have him over to this other side of the frame even a bit more, and then possibly rotate this just a touch as well. Okay, well, let's press Enter or Return. Again, a different interpretation of the same image. We can use the arrow keys to toggle back and forth between these two views. Here's the original file, and then here's this closer or tighter crop. Now, I don't really like this crop, so I'm going to change it. Press the R key to reactivate the crop tool, and I'm going to click and drag and bring this up a little bit, and then over, and then double click to apply that, and now I have a different version of the image. And again, all I'm trying to illustrate here are potential ways that you might work on your photographs. Alright, well, what else could we do with this image, and what might we do in the Develop module? Well, another thing that might be interesting to do would be to add a little bit of toning to this image. So in order to do that, we would select the crop that we like best. Here I'm going to click back and forth between these two images. And you know what? I like how I compose this on camera best, so I'll select that option, then press Command or Control apostrophe. Now I have this virtual copy here. I'll go ahead and make my way down to split toning. And the great thing about working with virtual copies is that it's going to remember the first state of the virtual copy, and you'll see what I mean in a second. Here I'll bring just a little bit of color in the highlights, much more color in the shadows there. And a lot of times when you're working with toning, it's better to have a little bit of a pure white and a little bit more color in the shadows. Here we have this nice subtle tone. And what we can do then is press the backslash key. There's before and after. Again, it only goes back to that original state of the virtual copy. Now at this point, we've really put this image through the paces. Let's go back and see what we've done. Well, for starters, we worked on color and detail and some things in the basic panel. Then we decided to get a bit creative. And typically when you're doing that in the Develop module, you're going to want to create virtual copies. That gives you this nice flexibility. We also explored how we could work with presets. In particular, we looked at a preset which would add a bit of grain to the image. And again, that was just a quick way to add that effect. From there, we explored with how we could crop an image some different ways, and also how we could perhaps add a bit of toning to one of our virtual copies. Now the great thing about all of this is that what we've done is we've processed this image with a lot of flexibility. Now if ever we were to decide to finish this image off, one of the things that we'd want to do would be to work on the overall details. We'd want to just confirm that we're going in a good direction with the sharpness and whatnot. So I'm going to open up the detail panel, and I'm going to go to a one-to-one view. And let's say that I really like this version of the image. Well, here I'd actually would revisit my sharpening amount to get this exactly where I wanted it. Because sometimes when we sharpen early, we're sharpening perhaps for a color photograph or for a different size or crop or who knows what. We make these other adjustments, we kind of stack them up. So it's always a good idea to revisit these controls, all of these sliders, and just make any fine-tune adjustments in order to get this exactly where you want it. Be sure to flip on the switch to look at your before and after. And you know what? I think that looks pretty good. We'll zoom out, Command or Control minus to do that. And that wraps up our workflow on this photograph.